Good morning from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The Guardian newspaper reports that London police are preparing a plan for possible use of force to remove hundreds of Occupy London protesters from outside St. Paul's Cathedral. Here at home, Michael Moore spoke at Occupy Oakland last night to show solidarity with wounded protester Scott Olson. And in New York, Occupy Wall Street protesters seem to be demonstrating better fiscal responsibility than Wall Street itself. The AP reports they have spent $50,000 and raised $450,000. Right now, I am joined by Heather McGhee, director of the Washington office of the progressive think tank Demos, and Ta-Nehisi Coates, senior editor of The Atlantic. Former New York Governor Eliot Spitzer joins us later in the hour. Heather and Ta-Nehisi, so good to have you here. If you are watching at home, Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of the best prose stylists on the entire internet, so you are doing it wrong if you are not reading Ta-Nehisi. That is my plug. I want to talk a little bit about the outrageous development that came out of Oakland this week, which I really sort of stunned me. This happened on Tuesday night. Scott Olson, who's a 24-year-old veteran of the Iraq War, was in Frank Ogawa Plaza. He was one of about 1,000 Occupy Oakland protesters gathered in the square. He served 2 tours with the Marines in Iraq. He received 7 medals. As a civilian, he had a job helping develop security applications for U.S. defense agencies. And he was active in Veterans for Peace and Iraq Veterans Against the War, which is an activist group. And police were cracking down on the occupation in Oakland and clearing the square, and they used tear gas to clear the crowd. And in the course of the police action, first of all, let me just say the tear gas, the images of the tear gas were really shocking. Right. They did not look like something that happens in the United States of America. Right. But in the course of this, Olson was critically wounded. He suffered a fractured skull, brain swelling after being hit by what witnesses said was a police projectile. Here's what happened after protesters tried to help Olson. Marine Iraq vet on the ground, critically injured while he was lying on the ground. This is what happened. I want to replay that just so that people understand, because it's confusing sort of cell phone videos. So take a look again. You will see a police officer tossing something into a crowd of people who have crowded around Olson to offer medical assistance. It's to a wounded man lying on the ground, and then it explodes, and people are chased off. A group gathers around Scott Olson, already fallen, and the police lob some sort of projectile into the crowd. Here's Olson being rushed from the scene to the hospital, where he remains to this day. Oakland says it is investigating what happened. Occupy Oakland has called for a general strike in the city on Wednesday. Protests in other cities have also gotten more tense. 52 protesters were arrested in Atlanta Wednesday. There were evictions and arrests in San Diego and in Nashville. At last count, 2,826 have been arrested in protests. Mayors in Boston, Los Angeles, and Chicago say protesters can't stay on public property indefinitely. And what happened to Scott Olson prompted vigils in cities from Oakland to New York to London to, and even this Thursday, Cairo's Tahrir Square, where there was a vigil saying, "We are Scott Olson, don't be afraid." It's really kind of remarkable images. So that's where things stand. And first, I just wanted to get your take from I was in bed on Tuesday night with my iPad, watching the Twitter reaction to what was going on in Oakland, and my initial instinct was, this is maybe overstate, like maybe people are being a little hysterical about what's going on. So then I got up and went to the computer, and I was looking at video that had been posted instantly, and it was really disturbing to see this in a major American city. What were you thinking when you saw it, Heather?
Yeah, exactly the same. I mean, it's in a way, I try not to have that reaction, this shouldn't happen in America, right? Because in fact, neither should the kind of Latin American type economic inequality. Right. Neither should the kind of police brutality that happens with alarming regularity in communities of color and low-income communities. So I try not to have that gut reaction first, this shouldn't happen in America. But then you see the video, and particularly sort of the large scale of it. You know, thousands of protesters in the streets, and then a really military-style intervention on the citizens of this, the citizens and residents of a community that the police are supposed to be serving and protecting. All to do what? to combat gang violence, to combat some sort of, crime ring. No, a peaceful protest was broken up with, what almost looked for a second like it could have been fatal mass violence by the police.
But what's interesting about that is I think that maybe there's not such an easy separation between what is actually a major crime ring, or what we're told is a major crime ring, and the tactics that we take to break up that crime ring, and the same sort of tactics that we employ to break up a peaceful protest. The fact of the matter is we've accepted a level of militarization in our cops for a long time now. And so something like this, I had the benefit of being on a long train ride and getting bum rushed by all of this once I got off. But I was totally unsurprised. It is shocking to see it on video, but the fact of the matter is when we've accepted a level of violence, state-sanctioned violence from police for a long time, to expect that it won't then be employed against protesters, I think is to expect a little too much. Not saying that you're necessarily doing that.
No, but
it is the
it's true, and
result of things.
The thing I worry about or think about in terms of the context of the Occupy movement is that there seems like there's these two planes, and I was getting into it with people arguing about this when this was going down. On one, it's a protest of inequality, fundamentally. We are the 99%. On the other level, what has happened with it is that at every point of police repression, essentially, or overreaction, or police violence, the pepper spray incident, right? The corralling 700 people on the Brooklyn Bridge that happened in New York, that has produced a spark that has propelled the movement. And in some ways, the movement needs these clashes as these kind of touchstones of motivation to kind of keep it going forward. And then you worry a little bit about the movement becoming about the police as opposed to the underlying concern. And I kind of, at the same time, though, these clashes with the police are illuminating something, I think, about the nature of where we are as a nation in terms of how we feel about the First Amendment.
Well, and also the relationship, at a fundamental level, something that unites the Tea Party, Occupy Wall Street, the police brutality movement, the anti-police brutality movement, is something about the individual's relationship to the state and what our government is willing to do for us, how human they see us. And so I think that there is something there. I think it makes a lot of sense that we would be moving into this issue of police brutality. Frankly, I think it's great because it also helps diversify the sort of cause of the movement. For a lot of the white protesters in New York, for them to be treated that way by the police was a really eye-opening experience. It was the first time that they had felt that the police were sort of not there to protect them, but were rather criminalizing them for sort of everyday behavior, like the 800 stop and frisks that happen every year, the majority of whom are young people of color.
But the problem, is that, it was just 5 months ago when the biggest issue for progressives was stopping crackdown on public sector unions, including the police, and protecting police pensions and police benefits and police as part of the 99% who are being screwed by the plutocrats. So what, how do we get around these politics here, right? I mean, whose side are the police on as we sort of move forward and watching this kind of very polarizing movement gets constructed?
Well, I don't want to be too conspiratorial about this, but I think you actually were onto something. There is some concern that this becomes about police brutality as opposed to income inequality. But as you were sort of leading to, maybe those things aren't as separate as we think. I think, again, not to bang this too hard on this, but African Americans have long known that there was some relationship between how much wealth you had and the police's attitude towards you. So these two things might be closer related than we would think.
And there's something about, I think, the way that civil disobedience, when it's doing it right, provokes reactions from the status quo that shock people because it demonstrates some deep truth about the nature of the status quo, about the nature of who's defending what. And I think, and in Oakland, just to give a little update, Olson's has improved. He's now no longer in critical condition. His family flew out from Wisconsin. Mayor Gene Kwan, who's the mayor, was flying back from Washington, D.C. when this whole thing went down. And this has now become, I would think it's fair to say, a scandal in Oakland. I mean, people have all seen that video. She had to issue this press release that used the term 99% about 99 times, sort of expressing her solidarity. She had planned to speak at the General Assembly. So I think we are seeing the backlash to that kind of overreaction from the police, and it's playing out in precisely the way that we've seen before. So maybe we're all kind of getting education a little bit about what's going on with law and order in this country. My story of the week, a return to Inequalistan, is up next.